In this video, I'll be ranking every character in Tekken 8 based on their Power Crush moves from worst to best. The main criteria are going to be payoff and safety, but I will also consider other properties like speed and range. At the end of the day, it's still going to be my subjective opinion, so feel free to disagree in the comments. And now let's get to the actual ranking. Starting with C tier. Now I want to preface that I don't think these are unusable. I actually think these are in a healthy spot, balance-wise, and everything above is already too good in my opinion. So the C tier moves aren't bad, it's just that the other ones are so much better. But yeah, the C tier ones are going to be the most generic ones, and by generic I mean, well, it seems to be somewhat standardized when it comes to mid Power Crush moves, and these are all going to be mid. And after looking at all of them, I would say the average mid Power Crush has around 2.5 range, 25 frames of impact, deals 25 damage, and are around half of that minus on block, so around 13. If you're looking for a mid Power Crush mnemonic, think 25. And when I don't mention a variable like speed or damage, assume 25 is a baseline. And the deviations from that baseline are used for the ranking, at least in C tier, because these are very similar. So at the very bottom we have Dragunov. Dragunov just doesn't really have anything going for his Power Crush move. It's a few frames faster than the average, but it has terrible range, and most importantly it's minus 14. Minus 14 is pretty bad. Many characters can get a juicy heat engager at minus 14. Some characters can even launch you at minus 14. And there isn't really a reason for this move to be minus 14, because there's nothing good about it. That's why it's at the bottom. Now he also has a mid Power Crush option from Sneak, which is nice in case you're entering Sneak at a negative, but it's also like a pretty generic mid that's minus 13 and only deals 20 damage. Devil Jin is very similar to Dragunov's. It has slightly more range and is slightly faster, but it's also minus 14 for no good reason. Next up we have Ling, Leory and Yoshimitsu. These are slightly less unsafe at minus 13, but also they only deal 20 damage. Ling's is otherwise pretty average. Leory has speed going for him. His is 17 frames fast, which is kind of nice, but it has slightly less range. And then Yoshimitsu's is basically Leroy's Power Crush with more range. And then Claudio, super basic, back to 25 damage. Lidia has slightly faster startup on her mid Power Crush, and she also has an option from her Heaven and Earth stance. It's minus 11, and I think it might get powered up with her thingy. And then Heihachi's pretty standard with extra range. He also has a homing mid from Fujin, his Wind God stance. That's also minus 13. Homing is a premium for Power Crush moves because they typically have no tracking, but they only come from stances to double up as a tracking option. Jun's is on the slower end, but these three are now slightly safer at minus 12. She also has an option from stance, which is also minus 12, which is nice. Kazuya's is just faster at 20 frames. It may be better than Leo's actually. Leo has the classic 25 speed, 25 damage with worse range, but it is only minus 12, which is as safe as mid Power Crush get outside of stance. He also has a mid Power Crush from box stance that is also a heat engager and only minus 12, but it only has like one niche use case in heat where you can do forward 2, forward 3, down, block 1+2 heat dash to keep them locked down, but it does take like half of your heat meter, and it's like such a fringe use case. Jin and Lars are very similar. Both have slightly more payoff, but are minus 13. Now, I don't think the jump from minus 12 to minus 13 is as significant as going from minus 13 to minus 14. It's just that there aren't many punishers that need minus 13 specifically, so I do think it's worth the trade-off. Jin's transitions into a hit throw that deals 31 damage total. Lars knocks down, but the fastest truly guaranteed hit you get is down back 1, I think. So you're looking at like just over 30 damage. It also has ridiculous range. It hits from like range 3.4, which is insane. Now, are you going to need that much range on a Power Crush? Probably not, but it's there. Another thing to note is that these two will not wall splat because of the special hit property, while most other Power Crushes do. Both also have a high homing power crush option from stance, which is nice because you don't have other legit options when you go into stance on block, typically at a frame disadvantage, and those are safe. And Jin's even does chip damage and is only -5 on block. Typically high power crush moves are -9, so that's really good. But coming from a stance means those moves just get to have different standards because you can't just use them when you're eating shit, and that's when you need them the most. Lily actually has 3 different power crush moves. A generic one from standing, that's 23 and fast and -14. But one thing I noticed when playing against Lily is that it would sometimes have just enough pushback on block where my jabs wouldn't reach, which was super annoying. And while you surely can consistently punish the move with your correct option, we don't always get the perfect punish, and we'll often use our jab punisher in the heat of the battle, and that doesn't always work on Lily's power crush for some reason. I think that's a plus, and then she also has power crush options from both back turned at -13 and from crouch dash or do glide, whatever you want to call it, at -11, and that's why I put her in upper C tier. Clive has 2 options, both are mids and both are -14. His standing option is his Titan Fist. That's basically a projectile. It hits from range 4+. It deals 25 damage, and if it absorbs a hit, it deals 9 bonus damage, which is nice, but it's pretty unsafe, and while using it as a projectile can be cute, I don't think it's still a legit winning strat. And then Phoenix 1 deals 41 damage, which is pretty good, but again, kind of unsafe. It's a good option when you go into Phoenix stance at a negative, but yeah, I'm not placing him any higher because both options are just -14, and some characters will absolutely fuck you up. Reina also has a couple of options. She has a pretty mediocre standing power crush move, which is -13 and only deals 20 damage at below average range. Then she has a similar option from her Heavenly Something stance, where she looks like she's about to drop a deuce, which deals 30 damage, but it is also -13. But the main reason she's at the top of C tier is because of her Sentai 1 option. Sentai 1 is a mid that's -14 by itself, but the annoying thing is that it actually has a follow-up, and I just think Power Crush moves should not have follow-ups. And Sentai 1 has a super delayable follow-up. It's annoying to punish because of that, and it's also a natural combo, and because it's so delayable and it stays a natural combo, you can easily hit confirm it. It's a pretty generous window, and the whole string Sentai 1-2 deals over 40 damage and wall splat, so it's good payoff. Annoying to punish because it has a follow-up, which should be illegal in my opinion. So that's why I put her at top of C tier. Now, I guess because it's coming out of stance, maybe she does not deserve the spot, but it's like she has good stances and both have power crush options. So you always have to worry about power crush, even though her standing power crush is kind of ass, she always has access to power crush options. Okay, so now in B tier, we are already treading OP territory. It might actually be upsetting to see me put these up in B tier, but at the end, I hope it makes sense if you like have a look at the whole tier list. So Zafina has a pretty bad standing power crush. It is pretty generic and -14, but she actually has 4 different power crush options. So the standing generic one, that's bad. Then she has one from the stance that looks like it's straight out of a horror movie, which deals pretty good damage. It's like 40 damage and -12, I think. And then where it gets pretty crazy is in Scarecrow stance. Well, first of all, if she's in heat, she can do Scarecrow down 4-1, and it becomes a safe mid power crush, which is pretty good. But where I really disagree, and I don't know who greenlit this, is Scarecrow 4, I think. And that's just a straight up mid power crush launcher. Yeah, that would be a big no-no for me. I don't know why it's in the game, but it is -18 on block. But holy shit, a launching power crush? What the fuck, man? That being said, no matter how toxic launching Power Crush is, it is super punishable. All of her moves outside of heat are punishable, and that's why I'm not putting her any higher. And I know it feels weird to have launching Power Crush at the bottom of fucking B tier. King has two really good Power Crush options. One is a mid, one is a high. The high is back 3. It's super quick at 16 frames, has really good range. It is actually one of his like long range punishers, and it deals 38 damage on hit because of a hit grab transition, which is really good. And it's only minus 10 for a 38 damage Power Crush. And his mid is up for 3+4. It's also pretty quick at 22 frames and only minus 12. But on hit, it also transitions in this really nasty mix-up where he starts running at you and you can't do anything except for guessing. And the reason this mix-up is so good is because of the mid that's completely safe, and it deals like over 50 damage because of all the follow-ups he gets on hit. And he can also do a grab that's unbreakable, deals over 40 damage, heat engages, and also has slows and a homing mid and stuff like that. Like the stance mix-up is just super bad to be in, and that's why I think it's super good. And then Nina's Blonde Bomb is actually a heat engage or Power Crush, and that is something that people are complaining about. And that shit's going in April. Good fucking riddance. Anyway, Blonde Bomb, 17 frames fast, really good range. So it is actually one of her punishers for long range, like pushback attacks. And what's really nice about Power Crush moves that are also heat engagers is, first of all, if you're absorbing damage and hitting the Power Crush, you immediately go into heat and recover like most of the health. And then because it's a mid Power Crush, it means it's unsafe. Hers is minus 14, which is pretty bad. But if you go into Heat Dash, you can make a minus 14 move plus 5 on block, which is like a huge fucking difference. And another good thing about Nina's Power Crush is that she can do it from crouch, she can do it from crouch dash, she can do it from her backsway thingy. So she pretty much always has access to her Power Crush, which is really nice. So yeah, it's pretty good, but I don't think it's like S tier or anything like that, simply because other Power Crush moves are so much better. Kuma's Power Crush is, in my opinion, an upgrade to Nina's. It is slightly slower at 22 frames, which is still really fast for a move that has 3.3 range, is also a mid heat engaging Power Crush that is minus 13 on hit, so it is safer and it has so much range. Like usually I would say you don't need that much range on a Power Crush, but in Kuma's case, it actually is really useful. With Kuma, you can just do your Power Crush, half screen away, and Heat Dash for +5, which is pretty crazy. And the reason I think you don't see Kuma's Power Crush Heat Dash as much as Nina's, and people aren't complaining about his Power Crush as much as with Nina's Power Crush, is because his Heat Smash is so ridiculously good that you don't see him Heat Dash out of the Power Crush. He can do like electric into Heat Smash, and his Heat Smash is 13 frames fast, which is ridiculous. Has a shit ton of range, and it also high crushes. So like when you want to spend heat with Kuma, it's going to be on electrics and his Heat Smash, and you don't have to use a Power Crush in between, I guess. Whereas Nina's Heat Smash is like, it's a pretty poorly tracking mid into high guns, which you can duck, like a Power Crush that you can duck and punish. What's this blasphemy? And that's why I think like it's just better to spend heat on Blonde Bomb compared to her Heat Smash. But with Kuma, his Heat Smash is so crazy and his electrics are really good that you never have to go for the Power Crush Heat Dash. And then he also has a pretty generic mid Power Crush from his hunting stance that's also minus 13. And Panda, like, it's the same shit. I don't know why this character exists. Law also has a Power Crush heat engaging option with 443. What's nice is that he can also use it from DSS, and it deals pretty good damage at 30. It's relatively quick and is minus 13, but obviously can be heat dash cancelled for +5. Now he also has a different option with back 1+2, which is a mid that is minus 14, but on hit it knocks down for a guaranteed 443, and that deals like 45 damage. So he has two options, one can be heat dash cancelled and one is just pretty high payoff. And then Raven, in my opinion, has the best mid Power Crush Heat Engager option. With forward 1+2, it has comparable speed, it deals really good damage at 30, it is a double hit, and it has absolutely ridiculous range, especially on the second hit. It reaches to around range 3.6, which is pretty crazy, and you can heat dash cancel it. It is -14, which is, I mean, comparable, but just having this much range and really good damage puts him ahead in my opinion. He also has a pretty good back-turned Power Crush, which is also -14 and a mid, but on hit it knocks down for a free follow-up, and that deals pretty good damage. It's like 40 something. Yeah, like a good Power Crush from back-turned, and the best mid heat engaging Power Crush is why he's here. Hwoarang is a pretty interesting one. He has a couple of options. Now his standing Power Crush is down forward 3, which is actually a string. Just like with Reina, but unlike Reina, he does not have to be in stance. He can just whip it out. Down forward 3, 4 is the string. It deals pretty good damage with 32 total. And he can also hit confirm the string. Both hits are -14, but having like a follow-up makes it kind of harder to punish. And what's also pretty crazy is that you can actually cancel the first hit, which is a Power Crush, into Flamingo. So you can like get into your opponent's face with a Power Crush into a cancel into Flamingo stance. So that's pretty unique, and it's just kind of annoying to deal with, having like the option to cancel it, having the option to do the second hit, and it being hit confirmable. And then he also has more options from his like, what is it, left foot forward stance, or like the other foot forward stance, whatever it is, where he has backlash, which is a juicy high that is 27 frames fast, so it's not super slow. It looks kind of slow, but it isn't really. It's a high, it is +4 on block actually, and deals chip damage, which is pretty good for a Power Crush. And then on hit, it deals pretty good damage and knocks down for a guaranteed follow-up, so total is like over 50. And it's a plus chipping, homing, high Power Crush. So that one's pretty crazy as well. And then he also has a pretty generic Power Crush from both Flamingo options. -12, but really nice to have an option for pretty much every stance. And then his standing one is pretty unique, cancelable, hit confirmable, delayable, all that. And backlash, the safe homing plus chipping high Power Crush that deals a shit ton of damage. Is also pretty sick. And then the candidates here in A tier are placed as high simply because they all have safe high Power Crush options, and like, call me a beta cuck, but I'm a sucker for safety. I remember playing Tekken Revolution, which was like the first iteration of something like a Power Crush move, but they were all completely invincible, but all the moves were launch punishable for pretty much every character, and I already hated it. And to think that we now get to use safe high Power Crushes is kind of crazy to me. Bryan is here simply for checking the box of being safe. Otherwise, he's like the shittiest of the best ones in my opinion. Nothing too special. And Alisa is pretty much a direct upgrade to Bryan. It has really good range. Its speed is 16, which is pretty crazy. She also has a mid option, pretty generic one, that's -13. But mostly she's here because of the high option. 60 frames is pretty quick. It's so quick that you might actually like counter hit moves without using Power Crush. It's so quick that you might not get launched or counter it by a low, or even beat the low if it doesn't high crush. And then Paul has two really good Power Crush options. He has a high safe one that is like slower compared to Alisa's, and I think it is worse compared to Alisa's at 24 frames, but it also has really good range. It is really good, but the reason he is up here in front of Alisa is because his mid Power Crush option is also like really good. It is -14, but it has really good range. It has pretty quick speed at 20, and the payoff is just ridiculous. If you hit it, it knocks down, and you can follow it up with a Death Fist hit, and you can actually get the clean hit, and it deals like almost 60 damage, and like the crazy range combined with being relatively quick at 20 frames. You can actually use it as a quick whiff punisher, and it deals almost 60 damage. And it's like worth being -14 in my opinion. Like having this plus a safe high power crush is just really good. Jack has 3 different power crush moves, and all of them have like a different type and are pretty good compared to other moves of that type. So he's like above average in every regard. He has a generic mid power crush, which deals above average damage and is only -12. It has pretty shitty recovery. Then he also has a power crush option from his gamma stance, which deals, I guess, below average damage, but a power crush mid heat engager is pretty good to have from stance. And then like the best power crush move he has is a safe high power crush. It has really good speed at 20 frames, good range, but most importantly it deals 30 damage, but then also knocks down, and you can run up and get a guaranteed ground hit, or you can like go for Oki and try to get him in the back. And then at the top of A tier we have Steve. He, in my opinion, has 2 really good power crush options. The one from standing is down back 1+2. It is on the slower end at 28 frames. It is a mid and it is -13, but what's pretty good about this is that on hit it deals 21 damage, but then gives you +14, which you can use for a guaranteed follow-up. You can do 1+2, which is his Sonic Fang, and that is a heat engager. So doing that, you're already dealing 40 damage. And then you're heat engaging, which then lets you do a running 2 on block at least, which deals over 10 chip damage. So doing that, you're already at beyond 50 damage. Heat engaged +5 in your opponent's face. And then of course, instead of doing the running 2 after the heat engage, you can also like step on their toes and start shuffling in their face like a piece of shit and, you know, do your mix-ups. And that's not even the reason why I think he deserves the top of A tier. The true reason for Steve having a spot up this high is actually his flicker back 2. Now, usually I wouldn't put like the stanced power crush moves up that high because you don't always have access to them. It's very limited. But in Steve's case, it is his flicker stance. He can auto block in flicker stance. You can manually transition to flicker stance, and it's like without being unsafe because you can just block in the stance. And he has enough seamless transitions into the stance. Everything he does, he can pretty much do a flicker transition, and it's very worthwhile to do so because he usually gets really good frames doing so. So even on block, never worse than -3. And being -3 on block means you always get to use your power crush option. And his power crush is actually the fastest in the game. It is 14 frames fast. And combined with the fact that like usually you're never worse than -3 means you're usually just counter hitting everything. And that makes him like so much less susceptible to being counter hit with lows. Lows are typically a pretty good way of dealing with power crush moves. In many cases, they have plus frames. That's what you would want to use a power crush move. And they use those plus frames to mix you up. Go for a low. And if you go for a power crush, you're just getting counter hit. And in like some cases, that counter hit can like launch you and shit like that. But with Steve, your move is so fast. Most lows are like getting straight up beaten by flicker back 2 because of how fast it is. It's like at most a 17 frames window that you have. If your low is like slightly slower, you're just getting hit by the power crush. He's not even absorbing damage. And if it's a low that high crushes, then yeah, the flicker back 2 will go over the low. But even then, most of the time, the low will just hit you as a punish and not as a counter hit. And usually all these lows are really scary on counter hits. So something like Leo's down forward 2+3, Jin down 2, things like that. All of these moves will like launch most power crush attempts. But Steve, he doesn't give a shit. He's going to whiff and then take the low as a punish and not have any counter hit properties, not getting launched, shit like that. And then in S tier, the best things combined pretty much. Safe, high, heat engaging power crush moves. And all of these motherfuckers have those. And like what's crazy is these are all like super fast, have really good range, are safe, and are heat engagers on top of that. The good thing is in April, that shit's gone. Eddy at the bottom, don't mistake his positioning at the bottom for like being bad. This is S tier. All of these are fucking amazing. Eddy's is 20 frames fast, It deals actually above average damage with 28, has good range, it's super good, but like the other ones have something else going for them. Eddy also has a decent option from stance, that's a mouthful. It's a mid that's -12, like nothing special, but mostly he's here because of the high heat engaging power crush, obviously. And then Victor, very similar to Eddy, and well, Lee, as a matter of fact, pretty similar as well. All of these have a pretty similar move, I would say. Good range, you know, high, about 20 frames. Victor also has a mid option from EI stance that deals 38 damage, which is pretty nice, but it's -14. But you know, it's a decent payoff considering safety. And then Lee's, it's kind of funny, I think, because in Tekken 7, I'm pretty sure his back 3+4, his power crush high, used to be -15, and now it's safe and a heat engage. He had like the shittiest power crush in T7, and now it's like one of the best. He also has a really good one from Hitman stance, Hitman 3, which is actually a homing high power crush that deals chip damage. I think it's only -5 on block, and on hit it deals really good damage, and then you can usually like get it down forward 4 guaranteed. And then you're looking at what is it, like 50 damage. So yeah, that's really good. It's a really good option from Hitman. And then Shaheen+Asuka and Azucena are just faster than the other ones. These are 16 frames. Asuka's actually 15 frames. But I put Azucena slightly higher because she actually also has a pretty good power crush from her Liberator stance with 3+4, which is a high homing, only -5 on block, and deals chip damage, I think. And on hit, it knocks down for a guaranteed ground hit, so it's over 40 damage on hit. And so yeah, both her stanced power crush and her standing power crush options are really good. And at the very top, we have Feng. He has 3 pretty good power crush moves. So the first one is very similar to the other ones. It is forward 1+2. It is 19 frames fast, so not as quick as these. But I do think it's like fast enough, and I do think it's better because it actually has properties outside of heat engaging or heat dashing. If you don't have dormant heat and forward 1+2 hits, they are actually knocked down and you are getting a guaranteed ground hit, which is like a pretty cool thing. I don't think many people notice. So it's pretty good even without heat. And then he also has a pretty good option from back turned. It is a mid, it is -13, but it's also a heat engager. So he has 2 power crush heat engagers, both from standing and back turned. And it actually was nerfed already. It used to be a full launch on heat dash. Usually if you like heat dash on a power crush, you're just getting a ground hit. This was like the one exception, which was fixed, and that's a good thing. But it's honestly like not a big deal in my opinion, because he's still getting guaranteed 443, which deals like a shit ton of damage. It's not like that much less compared to a combo, like you're not getting the carry and things like that, but like Feng in general just gets a really good ground hit with 443. Still really good. And then another thing that he has is actually from Kempo 1, and I don't think he needs a power crush from Kempo because it's like a auto parrying stance. But yeah, he has one with Kempo 1, and that one is actually a power crush normal hit launcher as well. Yeah, fuck that. And this one is actually only -15, so some characters can't even launch him. So that's great. And he has all of these, and all of these are really fucking good. And that's why he is, in my opinion, the king of power crush moves. And that concludes the list. If you disagree on something, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your opinion on what you disagree on, and also like the general state of power crushes in Tekken 8. And if you enjoyed this content, please also check out my other videos. Thanks for watching, and see ya.